faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. In this episode, we'll be exploring the works of Japanese author Yasunari Kawabata. The Sound of the Mountain by Yasunari Kawabata. This internationally renowned literary master actually had a profoundly tragic childhood. From childhood through adolescence, he witnessed his loved ones pass away, one after another. He came from a privileged background. His father was a doctor, his mother an aristocrat. But before age 2, Kawabata's father died of tuberculosis. His mother passed a year later, leaving him to his grandparents. His grandmother died during his elementary years, followed by his sister Yoshiko from heart failure caused by fever. At 16, his grandfather, his last remaining guardian, also succumbed to illness. In his 16-year-old diary, Kawabata described caring for his bedridden grandfather, assisting with all daily needs. His grandfather asked him to mail a postcard to his sister living far away. Kawabata recalled, "I feared grandfather's request to contact our estranged sister meant he foresaw his death." Understandably, this upbringing made him acutely sensitive to death's fragility and loneliness, yet also desperate for human warmth. A famous anecdote claims Kawabata loved 4 women all named Chio in his lifetime. Incidentally, this tale gained fame when Kawabata published accounts of the first 3 Chios in his alumni magazine. The first Chio, Yamamoto, came from his hometown. Her father, originally Kawabata's creditor, forgave his debts on his deathbed and sent living expenses via his daughter, giving the isolated writer a glimpse of familial warmth. The second Chio, a dancer, inspired his masterpiece, The Izu Dancer, but their class differences drove them apart. The third Chio worked as a tavern waitress but was already engaged. And the fourth Chio, a cafe waitress, sparked a whirlwind romance that reached marriage discussions, but over minor doubts about future happiness, this relationship too dissolved without resolution. Love and death, loneliness and young maidens are the portrait of Kawabata's life and the eternal themes in his works. In 1968, when the Swedish Academy awarded Yasunari Kawabata the Nobel Prize in Literature, the chairman of the selection committee, Mr. Anders Osterling, specifically highlighted in the award speech how Kawabata returned to Japanese literary traditions after embracing modern European realism. He praised the delicate, poetic sensibility flowing through Kawabata's works, which perhaps embodies the Eastern spirit. Kawabata Yasunari left behind many renowned masterpieces: Snow Country, The Old Capital, Thousand Cranes, The House of the Sleeping Beauties, and others. The Sound of the Mountain is often overlooked among them, yet it perfectly captures Eastern melancholy with exquisite balance. Any more would feel vulgar, any less would seem insipid. Kawabata never relied on dramatic plots to captivate readers. The Sound of the Mountain was written between 1949 and 1954, when Kawabata was at life's midpoint, around 50 years old. The novel depicts ordinary daily trivialities, but it's precisely in these mundane details that the writer's skill shines brightest. The protagonist is an elderly man nearing his twilight years, Shingo Ogata. At the story's beginning, he furrows his brows and slightly parts his lips as if deep in thought, though others perceive it more as sorrow. His son Shuichi notices his father's expression but shows no concern, having grown accustomed to it. Just then, the father speaks, asking Shuichi, "What was the name of the maid who left the other day?" The son replies it was Kaio. Shingo then asks, "When did Kaio leave?" The son's tone factual: 5 days ago. 5 days ago? Shingo suddenly feels sorrow. After just days, he can no longer clearly recall the maid's face or clothing. Weighty themes of aging, death, and loneliness emerge through the seemingly ordinary exchange, utterly without pretense. The novel reveals Shingo's awareness of approaching life's end when he hears the mountain sound, the sound of the mountain, quite inadvertently. His daughter-in-law, Kikuko, mentions that her aunt heard the mountain sound just before dying. This fear of death stirs in Shingo a fierce clinging to life. But in Kawabata's writing, this obsession isn't Western style, unlike the life depicted in Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. Um, the old man Santiago, enduring days without catching fish, insists on catching a big fish to prove, though aged, he still has vitality. In Kawabata's work, this life obsession becomes internalized in Shingo's subconscious. The protagonist, Shingo, feels alienated from his family with a profound awareness of his own loneliness. His forbidden affection for his daughter-in-law, Kikuko, is portrayed with extraordinary subtlety. Let's start with his family. First, Shingo's son. Shuichi, having experienced war, sees life as fragile, insignificant, and the world as absurd and meaningless. So he chooses to live for the moment instead. Just a week after marrying Kikuko, he began indulging in debauchery. Shingo's daughter, Fusako, has an unhappy marriage and an unpleasant personality. Her words sting, always touching raw nerves. Living back at her parents' home, she often makes the atmosphere awkward with her cutting remarks. After the tension, she complains her father never liked her. With such children and his wife Tamiko, who's weathered life with him, not being his true love either. He originally loved his wife's sister, but she died young from illness. His wife knew she couldn't match her sister's beauty, but still hoped to be Shingo's second wife. Thus began their marriage. Though it's hard to say if marrying her sister would have brought lifelong happiness, the cruel twists of fate in youth forged the elderly Shingo. Shingo constantly yearns to escape this life where his children are like indifferent strangers under the same roof, and he finds no comfort or communication with his wife. Two details in the novel. First, after hearing the Death Omen mountain sound, the terrified Shingo laments he can't wake his wife to share his fear. This can't isn't physical impossibility. He could shake her awake, but that she wouldn't understand his terror, even if awakened. Another detail, Shingo recalls during their wedding banquet, seeing a chestnut fall from a branch, tracing a beautiful arc in the air. The next day, he picked up that chestnut, eager to share that fleeting beauty, but seeing his wife, the urge vanished, revealing his lack of a true life companion. This fortune lies in having someone to share both life's fears and beauties. Yet Shingo gets neither. Kawabata portrays his profound loneliness precisely through such small life moments. Thus, aging Shingo yearns even more for his wife's unattainable sister, searching for his beloved's traces in his daughter, only to find her more unappealing and petty. He then seeks hope in his granddaughter, but still ends up anxious and uncertain. Another crucial thread is Shingo's uncontrollable obsession with his daughter-in-law, Kikuko. In Shingo's desert-like emotional life, Kikuko is the only light. This outsider is closer to his heart than any blood relative. Kikuko is not only gentle, kind, and radiant, but also carries Shingo's loneliness, sorrow, and helplessness within her. Shingo, in her, he sees himself and the understanding he craves. Shingo's longing for his wife's sister was first sparked by Kikuko's offhand remark. Recall when Shingo heard the mountain sound. His wife couldn't empathize, but Kikuko revealed his aunt heard it before dying, piercing his deepest fear. And this aunt was none other than his wife's sister. Thus, Kikuko's words not only confirmed his twilight years, but reignited a long dormant fire within him. You too had loved passionately once. Sorrow isn't life's only hue. Love and passion are also part of it. Shingo has many hazy dreams, continuing youthful loves. In these shadowy emotions, he confirms he's still alive. Moreover, though pure and lovely, Kikuko receives no affection from her husband. This misfortune makes Shingo feel he's seeing his own reflection. Shingo finds solace in Kikuko's optimism and later dotes on her all the more. Kikuko, there's a scene where a storm hits, causing panic. But Kikuko delights in it, laughing joyfully and playing French songs with relish. This reaction shows Kikuko's innate optimism, unwittingly comforting Shingo, shrouded in death's shadow. Because he once told Kikuko that at his funeral, he only wanted this lullaby record played. No sutras, no eulogies. Kikuko remembered his words and understood him, even unintentionally, hinting that life has bitterness and sweetness. While bitterness is inevitable, don't forget the sweetness. After this, life seemed routine, but Shingo's personal sorrows and his children's troubles deepened gradually. Shingo kept attending old friends' funerals, hearing about their illnesses, suffering, and eventual deaths. Meanwhile, his daughter's husband vanished, likely eloped with a mistress, having sent divorce papers before disappearing. His wife Tomiko worried. How would their daughter, raising two children alone, manage in the future? Their son Shuichi impregnated his mistress. Shingo sent his secretary to offer compensation for her departure. Kikuko finally learned of her husband's affairs. After her first pregnancy, she chose abortion and returned to her parents. After returning, before the mistress delivered, Kikuko became pregnant again, but she and Shuichi didn't reconcile. So Shingo and his wife still feared their son and daughter-in-law would divorce. The novel's end offers no clear resolution. It merely lays bare the complexity. The eloped son-in-law remains missing. Fatherless children show various issues. The daughter hopes Shingo will fund her to run an inn. Though Shuichi ended things with the mistress and hasn't explicitly sought divorce, he shows no special attachment to Kikuko. As for Shingo and Kikuko, though his affection stays within propriety, everyone sees through it. The closing scene shows Shingo and Shuichi on a train facing a man and woman who resemble father and daughter. Shingo kept asking, Shuichi, are you sure they aren't father and daughter? Shingo marveled that two unrelated people could look so alike, never dreaming of each other's existence. The novel notes. On life's long road, they merely crossed paths for 30 minutes, parting without speaking. The miraculous departed unaware of their own miracle. Then, the woman got off at Yokohama while the man remained on the train, confirming they were strangers. Shingo excitedly shared his observation. He noticed the man's despondent expression after the woman left, but his son Shuichi saw nothing remarkable in the scene. Irritated by his father's questions, Shuichi said, that woman was about Kikuko's age. That's why you thought they looked like father and daughter, wasn't it? Shuichi had realized Kikuko was deeply rooted in his father's heart, Shingo's emotional response. Rather than stemming from the similar strangers, it came from Shingo's profound connection with Kikuko. Beyond others, Kikuko herself recognized her father-in-law's affection. Midway through the novel, Kikuko expressed this to Shingo. From now on, I'll pay attention to everything you notice, father. Hearing this, Shingo realized he'd never had such an understanding companion. Near the end, Shingo proposed Kikuko move out to gain freedom. Kikuko replied that even if separating from Shuichi, she wished to keep caring for him, willingly and wholeheartedly. From a black and white moral perspective today, Shingo and Kikuko's feelings might seem abnormal. Though ethically questionable, Kawabata portrays it with breathtaking beauty. Two reasons. First, in Japanese culture, beauty transcends moral values. Second, their affection remained restrained and pure, never descending into vulgarity. While Shingo adored Kikuko's youthful beauty, Kawabata presents it as a symbol of pristine purity. It remained utterly untainted by worldly corruption. She gave love unreservedly, shining with all her light. This unguarded purity revealed life's essence to Kawabata. Kawabata once said, If he could create an immortal maiden in literature, he could die content. The profound sorrow lies in such immortality's impossibility, just as cherry blossoms embody fleeting beauty, admired for their impermanence, so does a maiden's youth fade with age. But it's beauty's evanescence that makes it precious. Life's brilliance shines precisely because it ends. It's precisely because Shingo understood how rare true mutual understanding is in life. So even a fleeting moment of connection, especially with someone impossible to be with, becomes immensely precious. In this sense, it reflects real life, full of uncertainties and helplessness, yet still worthwhile. Masterpieces move us largely through the author's extraordinary empathy. In The Sound of the Mountain, each character carries their own sorrow. Kawabata never judges or mocks. He simply reveals fate's helplessness with perfect nuance. We might condemn Shuichi for straying despite having a perfect life at home, but the novel hints his drastic change likely stems from war trauma. When war is mentioned, his demeanor turns sharp, eyes almost fierce. Kikuko notes Shuichi can be frightening, a generational wound affecting many. Tomiko, too, is tragic, knowing she can't replace her sister in Shingo's heart, yet staying devoted, and she's acutely aware of this misfortune. When their daughter complains of Shingo favoring Shuichi and Kikuko, Tomiko shares her father also preferred her sister, perhaps understanding her husband still loves her sister most, thus compensating their daughter with extra care. Kawabata positions himself humbly, listening intently to each character's truest voice, making every mundane detail profoundly moving. Another hallmark of the novel is its Eastern-style, idle brushstrokes. These digressions, random memories, or distracted observations don't advance plot but deepen emotion. Notably, Kawabata didn't develop this style immediately. He initially studied Western modernism, forming Japan's new sensation school with Yokomitsu Ryuichi. They emphasized subjective experiences to highlight personal anguish and confusion. Take Yokomitsu's famous example from Head and Belly to understand new sensationism. The express train sped through small stations in broad daylight, erasing them like stones. The word erased in the latter half represents a logical leap that transforms objective disappearance into intense subjective perception. Traces of this style appear in Kawabata's early novels depicting youthful trauma. Yet while these works gained attention, their self-absorbed themes limited their scope. Kawabata achieved true mastery by fusing Western modernism with Eastern spirit, revitalizing Japan's traditional aesthetics. His first mature masterpiece, The Izu Dancer, radiates the charm of Eastern-style digressive writing. Like The Sound of the Mountain, it lacks dramatic plots, centering on a Tokyo high schooler's first love. This first love is merely traveling with the dancer's family, admiring her innocent grace, at best a crush. Their closest moment comes when she sees him off at the dock with no confession, only reluctant parting. Later, the boy tells a stranger, "I just left someone I love." But appreciating this novel requires noticing its digressions. For example, elders appear at both the story's start and end. First, a stroke-paralyzed man at an inn begs travelers for remedies until buried under prescriptions like snow. Despite the elder's suffering, the protagonist reacts with disbelief he's still alive. The boy seems callous, yet after parting with the dancer, he meets another suffering elder. Her son and daughter-in-law died in a mining accident. She carries one grandchild on her back and holds two others' hands. Miners entrust her to the boy to escort to an eastern port. The boy first recalls the dancer, then vows, "I'll get her to the court tomorrow." These seemingly unrelated digressions prove crucial to the entire novel. This orphan student, initially pessimistic, discovers common people's resilience through the Izu Dancer. Even amid hardship, life radiates vitality. Through loving the dancer, he regained empathy, the true meaning of his first love. The relationship's outcome matters less than how love rekindled his passion for life and humanity. This Eastern sensibility, indirect, subtle, profound, is conveyed through those earlier digressions. Returning to the sound of the mountain, it represents Kawabata's post-war period. His portrayal of Eastern sentiment grows exquisitely detailed, permeating every scene. The chapter titles, Cicada Wings, Winter Warbler, Morning Dew, Spring Bell, Autumn Rain, evoke seasonal poetry. Countless details show characters interacting with nature, gaining enlightenment. This differs from Western depictions, not Lear battling storms, nor Byron, nor Ahab reclaiming dignity from the sea, nor even Eliot facing spiritual desolation in the wasteland. Here, nature blends with daily life. Summer cicadas, seasonal dishes, garden bonsai, mosquitoes in bed nets. Shingo dreams of mosquitoes, an Eastern sensibility familiar to Chinese readers from Kawabata's letters. Shingo longs to visit his hometown, but his wife dreams of its fields lying fallow. This imagery resonates with anyone schooled in Dao Yuan Ming. My fields and gardens will be overgrown. Why not return? More often, these delicate natural elements reveal life's imperfections. In the Winter Warbler chapter, New Year's breakfast sardines finally match pre-war quality, Shingo muses. Ordinary lives persist through hardship just to taste dried sardines again. So many never made it. This echoes a detail from Departures, Japan's Oscar-winning film. Sasaki eats chicken with his apprentice Daigo, exclaiming, "Delicious." Then, "How cruel." Crucially, Kawabata understood this Eastern sensibility was fading, perhaps the novel's deepest sorrow. Near the end of The Sound of the Mountain, Shingo repeatedly notices U.S. military aircraft, symbolizing Western conquest and threat. Of course, from a strict moral stance, Chinese may view this as Japan's militarism reaping its due consequences, unworthy of pity. But just as Shingo ages, his tradition-following generation fades. The war-ravaged next generation moves like walking corpses. Future generations may lose ancient memories altogether, perhaps becoming ice-water drinking Americans. I believe the novel's stylization, each chapter mirroring nature, reflects this. In essence, Kawabata wrote to preserve Japanese sensibility, knowing it would vanish like life itself, never to return. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Nobel laureate Yasunari Kawabata's The Sound of the Mountain. The transcript is below this audio. Until next time.